People who live in small towns, what's the story everyone knows but no one likes talking about?
In my town we had the mayor's daughter drive drunk through a pizza place and get out of the car and walk up to the counter and try to order. It was on the news for like one day and then disappeared completely. The place just opened back up.
The superintendent of my hometown school district got a DUI in a school zone and used his wealth and influence in the community to not only get out of jail time, but to get the arrest completely scrubbed from his criminal record. He has sued multiple people for slander for mentioning it publicly because, as far as the official record is concerned, it never happened.
About 3 years ago, a young lesbian couple came up missing. They found their car half submerged in the river but no sign of the girls. They found them a week later in the river dead with bullet wounds in their heads. It devastated the town when it happened, but I feel like it got covered up quickly so it wouldn't scare off any tourists. They made a small memorial near the river for the girls, and it's been vandalized beyond repair twice now. In the other town I lived in, the mayor's wife killed an elderly couple on Christmas Eve while driving drunk. She never did any time. Completely swept under the rug. But he didn't get re-elected, thankfully.
There's a dungeon under the abandoned yellow house in the park that was used by the current owner's great-grandfather. He admitted on his deathbed that he was the cause of 13 disappearances from the 1910s to the 1930s. Issue is, we don't know who the 13 victims are since the surrounding area has had hundreds of disappearances over the decades and we have nothing to go off of except a period of nearly 30 years. Plus, no one wants to think about a relative or ancestor being locked up in there.
A gazebo was removed from the town green because it became a place late at night where people were regularly caught having sex. It was a beautiful gazebo, with comfortable benches, like church pews, where people could relax in the warm weather and enjoy the town green. But, no more.
There's a statue of a volunteer firefighter at the corner of the village's busiest intersection. He was memorialized for being selfless and being the embodiment of being a good neighbor. Nobody ever talks about though that when he was alive they called him Richie the Retard.
One day I see a bunny. But like a huge bunny. I thought it was normal sized, but as I got closer I realized I was wrong. Thing was an absolute unit. Like medium-sized dog. As time went on I would occasionally see more and more of these gigantic mutated rabbits. So turns out this guy had a couple of pet giant rabbits and then moved out to college. The official story his parents gave him was that his beloved pet rabbits got sick like a week after he moved out and had to be put down. Dude was devastated. My guess is that the rabbits weren't put down and were instead released. Now I'm not sure if Flemish giants can interbreed with wild bunnies, but everyone swears that even the local bunny population is composed of mega bunnies. And the parents are low-key kind of hated by everyone now for being dicks to their child.
Change of tone on this one, but I figured I'd share anyway. I grew up in a tiny farm town in PA. On Christmas Eve, one of the local farmers would go to all the houses with kids and climb on the roof and walk around for a minute or two to keep our belief in Santa alive and well. It's hilarious cause he never asked. Just always did it every year. It obviously wasn't talked about much so that the kids never caught on. But was truly so cute. Edit. Thank you for the silver. It's my first Reddit award. So glad this is making people happy. Tilda. Two guys robbed one of those car compacting places, where they mash up old vehicles into giant metal bricks. They went in at night, dropped off by their GFS to go get parts and scrap to sell I guess. They'd done it before. The owner found out and waited for them one night, shot both in the backs of the heads, put their bodies in the car and crushed it up. The truck didn't come to pick up the metal for a couple days, so the one with their bodies sat out in the heat. The officers only found them after the GFS telling police they dropped them off there and couldn't find them again. They checked the place and found them from the smell. I remember before the two guys were found, missing posters of them were all over the town. The former principal of our school used to be a Nazi. Like a real Nazi, Hitler Jugendgauleiter Nazi. There's a formerly respected lawyer in my hometown that's been practicing since the 70s and has been involved in a sex trafficking circle for decades. My town has a big drug and poverty problem. So when women who were in trouble for drugs would come to him as clients, he would offer them drugs or lenient sentences because of his legal connections in exchange for prostitution. The worst part is that police, judges, parole officers and other respected men in the community not only knew or at least suspected what he was doing, but many of them took part in it. So the women could never turn to local law enforcement because of the corruption. An article was published last year that went viral in my hometown. But as far as I know, the lawyer is still being investigated. Guy the First used to go to school with murdered a guy because the guy was his secret lover and was running his mouth. His family is well-connected lawyers and had it covered up to look like a hit and run. Then the little brother was driving a boat while drunk and inadvertently killed a girl. Also got away with it, and he didn't have a boating license and also wasn't tested for alcohol. Everybody knows the truth, but nobody can do anything about it. Thank God I got out years ago. In what was once voted the most beautiful small town in America, a police officer was driving home at the end of his shift when, on an off-ramp, he encountered a bunch of brush inexplicably placed in the roadway blocking his path. When he got out of his cruiser to clear it, he was assassinated by a killer with his shotgun. That was in 2013, and the case has yet to be solved. Worse yet, it unwound a mire of controversy and conspiracy. A year later, a mother and daughter were found brutally murdered. The mother shot multiple times, and the daughter bludgeoned and her throat slit. The year after that, a 35-year-old woman went missing. And a little over a year later, that woman's father was shot to death on his own property while hunting. Theories abound about the connections between these four unsolved cases: local government corruption, intimate affairs and murder plots. And the FBI now maintains a near-constant presence in this small Kentucky town of only 12,000 citizens. All of this in Bardstown, Kentucky. The Bardstown Podcast. https://www.bardstownpodcast.com does an excellent job of breaking it all down. Freshman year, my history teacher was fired 1 month into the school year because some kids found porn on his school laptop. Everyone knows. There is a family in my hometown that nobody talks to. My grandma has a small bar and doesn't allow them in. The reason is because the children are all product of incest. The two parents are brother and sister. Then she had a baby with her dad. They had multiple children, and when they got older they had children with their children. It's fucking disgusting. So not a super small town, but still something everyone knows but is getting swept under the rug. My high school has a legacy of teachers dating and marrying former students. The journalism teacher was let go after being accused by multiple women over many years of sexual abuse. Everyone knew he was a creep, but no one except the victims knew his creepiness went beyond putting a hand on students' thighs or giving shoulder rubs. Still wildly inappropriate, but the admins knew and nothing ever happened, so none of us students thought to take it any further. After a short review, his teaching license was reinstated and gone. He is free to do this to other women. He was married to a former student for a brief time as well. The German teacher was sleeping with a student of age when it came out, but there is suspicion it didn't start when she was 18. It came out and his wife left him and moved with their kids. He blamed the student and then quit shortly after. One of the admins is married to a former student. They got engaged the day after her graduation and married shortly after. When I graduated, she had just started teaching there despite seeming way underqualified compared to the other teachers in the department. He was also very close with the other two teachers. Young local lawyer is kidnapped in the middle of the night at gunpoint and ordered to tie up her Husband. There is a man in jail for the kidnapping, but she has never been found. Happened in the early 90s, and the theory is she was killed to cover up corruption in the court system. She was supposedly going to the DA about some shady shit. That some of the large apartment blocks built in the last 15 years are either unsafe or illegal. It came out a few years back that a member of our local government, in charge of checking building regulations, was frequently sleeping with and accepting bribes from all the major building companies. She then fled out of state, and all the other party members had to clean up after her. Back then way less people had moved down here, so no one really took any notice outside of the local news outlets. But I still think about all the building built too close to each other, or how some are still being found to be unsafe. My town's pretty small. One of the middle school teachers fucked a high school student. His dad works at the high school and didn't show up for a month after his son got arrested. Nobody talks about it, but everybody knows. There's a pretty influential guy in town who works for a pretty big local company, and his wife committed suicide a few years back. We also have another pretty big wig, and he broke up with his missus because she caught him having sex with a man. One of the managers of a pretty big local hotel is a cross-dresser. Another local hotel is owned by an elderly couple in their 60s. And the man likes to have sex with twinks. His receptionist is a 19-year guy who got a brand new 1 Series BMW as a Christmas gift from the hotel owner. A local village 5 miles out of town is famous for having a really high incidence of cousins marrying and children being born with webbed feet. Another local village 5 miles out of town is famous for its thriving swingers community. There's a famous family in the area who is known to have practices cannibalism during WW2 food shortages. One of the local taxi companies is a front for a drug-dealing operations. They only serve people they know, and a 2-mile taxi ride with them is about $50.